good.
Oh, okay. Are we live?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening and welcome. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, and we are meeting at Centennial Middle School at 305 East, 2320 North in Provo, Utah. And we will begin with a roll call, and we'll start down with Nate.
Nate Bryson, board member.
Terry McCabe, board member.
McKay Jensen, board member. Keith Rattell, superintendent.
Melanie Hall, board president.
Rebecca Nielsen, board vice president. Jennifer Partridge, board member. Gina Hills, board member.
And Derek Anderson will be joining us shortly. I forgot to mention that the time is 5:15 p.m. Is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene study session.
And we are now in study session. I'm going to turn the time over to Mark Wheeler for construction update.
Hi, everybody. As always, just let me know if you have any questions. You can hear me okay? Okay. Just a few updates on some of our major projects. Before we pull up these slides, I just want to let you know one thing we're working on as well. We're looking at getting updated bids for a project that was approved for this coming capital improvement year, which are backup generators to be installed and provided for Canyon Crest and Westridge elementary campuses. We've been looking at it for the last couple of years. We weren't able to make the budget work the last 2 fiscal years, but it was approved for this year. So I'll let you know as we work through that bidding process. Darren, can you go to the first slide? This first one, I just wanted to give you an update on what to expect up at Tinview. This, of course, right, is the current layout of the campus. There's a West Academic Wing, South Academic Wing, right, and South Gym, Thunderdome. Just so you know, we'll have one more school year with the current parking situation. But as of August of 23, August 23, when we move into this new academic wing on the north end, we'll also have 55 parking stalls here at the northwest corner. We'll have 21 stalls at the northeast corner, and we'll have this upper east parking lot back as of August of 23, which, as you can see, is almost 200 parking stalls. So right now we have 106 in the west side and some maybe 30 over in this section. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know we can just make it through one more school year with the tough parking challenges we have. It'll be much better starting August of 23. Gary, can you go to the next one? This is just an update on the construction project. This is, you can see the edge of the track here. This is the northwest corner of the track and field. This is the new southeast wing that you've heard me reference before. This will be the entrance coming off of the track and field area. On this main floor, there will be new locker rooms, some team rooms. On this second floor, sewing room, robotics room in this area, and then if I remember right, I think 3 business marketing classrooms as well on this second level. Go to the next one, Darren. This is taking a look with some new drone footage on our north 3-story academic wing. I just wanted to show you this so you can see some of the progress. You can see the new metal decking starting to be placed on the upper floors and more steel beams at the top section of this area. And you'll start to see over the next couple of weeks the lightweight concrete poured over this decking. So they're moving. They're slowly moving up with the structure month by month. This is going back to the southeast section, which I showed you a minute ago. This is just the interior, so you can see interior framing is going up. There's significant mechanical work that's also being installed in that area. And again, we're trying to get this new area done for this next school year. It'll be somewhere between Labor Day and about mid-October right now is the best timeline. Any questions on the project before I get to this next item? Okay. This next one is something that's developed since we last met. Just to give you a frame of reference here, this is standing right east of the baseball field. Here's left field of the baseball field. And many of you know this trail that's been used traditionally coming down those side hills. You go to the next one, Darren. weekend before last, someone went and installed this fence panel and blocked off the access to that trail. And I just wanted to point out, we had our surveyors come and stake our property lines. This stake right here is a corner of our district property line. So this is about 6.5 feet into district property. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is in case you hear anything, I asked some of our maintenance team to remove this today. We could not find out who did this. We talked to several neighbors. It was no one in the school district. It was no one in the city of Provo. We just don't know who came and installed that on a weekend. So if you hear anything, it's on our property. We removed this so there's access to this trail again. Can you go to the next one, Darren?
Who owns that property on the other side?
So it's a good question. So see right here, Nate, where this trail continues north?
Yeah.
There's a point about right here where our corner ends, at least for this parcel. And then there's a piece that goes up, an awkward piece that goes up into this ravine. When you look on the county parcels, it shows no one. It's a blank box with a 0. We had our surveyors and our title company search for us. They think it is some old common area for an HOA.
For Quail, the Quail Valley.
Correct. But it does not show that ownership on the county parcels. My guess is this, and I'll let you know when we verify. My guess is that maybe there's some students and others who maybe found a good hiding spot, and maybe somebody with the association decided to take it upon themselves to block this trail. They just can't, however. So, and then our property continues north along this hillside, and then back north of that ravine again, below this other home on this other note.
This has never been blocked before, though.
Correct. Yeah, it's never been blocked. It's been an open trail for a long time.
I think that HOA has been renegotiating their situation the last couple weeks, so
Okay.
maybe this is part of that.
There was no way for us to identify. They added this sign that said no trespassing, but there was no identification as to who installed this, no contact information or anything, but it was on district property, so we removed it.
Mark, really quickly, so that trail the whole trail is in our property or just where
Not the entire trail. Our corner of this particular parcel ends about right here, heading north. And then there's a piece that goes up in the ravine, as I mentioned, and then our property starts again a little bit further down the trail.
so it gets cut off and then picks up again?
Correct.
Technically, then they could fence off their portion if they get the lines, right?
As long as they're on their property boundary.
Right, okay.
Correct.
But which I feel like is probably their intention, they just do it on the correct lines.
And I think it's a good question, and I think they may have a difficult time where it's been kind of a precedent where this has been used for so long for access to that area. And so they for sure need some legal counsel and coordinate with the district on that. Okay, on Shoreline Middle School, just wanted to let you know, we had the bid day for suppliers and subcontractors about 3 weeks ago. This was the result of bid day, just over $68 million. And again, when I share these numbers with you, these numbers are construction only, right? I'm not referencing soft costs or anything else. We've spent the last 3 weeks working on value engineering ideas, and we've reduced to about 65.6. Which is a good sign on one side, because we did a very good job during design saying no a lot. So there wasn't a lot of easy hanging fruit that we could just cut off. And it's 179,000 square feet. So we are looking at 65.6 as our base construction budget. And we'll proceed with that. We'll just need board approval to proceed with that amount.
Mark,
Yes.
when we were first talking about the project, we were projecting it was going to be 175,000 square feet. Could you explain why there's more?
So some of that, thanks Jennifer, so some of that is where we expanded the cafeteria space. And I think that's probably about 2,500 of that 4,000 square feet. And then, sorry, I don't have the breakdown of the remaining square footage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So per square foot, we're looking at...
Per square foot, I think it was about $366 a square foot. Any other questions on Shoreline?
We're breaking ground
Like this week, next week?
We're hoping within the next 30 days, you'll start to see construction fencing and some equipment start to mobilize on that site.
Are we doing anything before that to break ground, or just gonna go in and break ground?
That we wanted to ask that question. We can have a groundbreaking. It's up to you as the board whether you want to have a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting when it opens or both. We can do whatever you like.
Okay, we'll get back.
Okay, let us know. Okay, this is moving on to the Wasatch Site, and I know this is a lot of detail. I just want to show you one thing, just to give you a bearing so you know where we are here. This is Locust Lane, right, on the west side. This is 820 North. And this is Apple over here, correct? So I just want to, we've been working on something which I mentioned to you last month. Right, the day after we closed on this property, Timpanogos Canal Company contacted us. They previously had told us there were no users with their association south of our campus, right? So south of 820 North. The day after we closed, they contacted us and said, hey, sorry, we have one owner who owns a half share. So I'm going to go through this really quick. You just stop me and ask me any questions. This dotted line right here, coming onto our site, that is the official easement for Timpanogos Canal Company. All that covers is their equipment here, which we call the North Head Gate. According to the canal company, that is the end of their line. So that's where their services end. Because this one neighbor here on the south side of 820 North owns a half share for the past 17 years, the water has made it from the end of the canal line through a ditch line which exits on Oakmont, goes under the road in a pipe, and then makes its way in an open ditch down to the backyard of the neighbors. Really long way to get that water. And it was never tracked by the canal company. It was just because they considered it tailwater. So, because of this, the canal company has informed me that we are responsible to make sure this tailwater gets to this one user on the south side. What I'm trying to do, first of all, if you look at this line that elbows up, goes from the northwest to the southeast, that is just one option of a proposed line which would be underground, would be a pressurized line to get this tailwater to one user over here. I've got a few concerns with it. I talked to the homeowners, I talked to the canal company. One, it's expensive for the school district, and we don't want to become the canal hub at the end of their line, which they've told us they're not legally responsible for anything past that point. So we're trying to figure out the most creative way to do this. We already offered to buy their half share. They want to keep that half share. They said they were looking for more. My worry is this: if they ever decide to sell, no matter the timeline, the district is paid for an expensive pressurized line for one person for a half share. So I consulted with our legal reps this morning, met with them, we walked this site. I've also consulted with other engineers. So I'll get you some answers here and some options quick. My guess is right now, this is preliminary, if we had to do this pressurized line, my guess is 80 to 120,000. And so we've got some other options we're looking at, long term. But I just wanted to give you an update of that's one of the things we've been working on this site, along with a lot of the work with the city on all the rest of the connections for all the other utilities.
Mark, are they going to share any of that responsibilities if they didn't inform us correctly?
No, so the beginning of this week, I sent them a note and I said, hey, just so you know, we're happy to accommodate a right-of-way or an easement, but our easement only covers your north head gate to here. We don't mind helping accommodate it, but we are not benefiting or connecting to this line, so you need to let me know how you're paying for this and how you want to design. They answered me in about 30 seconds and made it clear that they would not be participating in any way.
Can we use eminent domain to get a water share?
That's one of the options. That's the discussion we had today. The attorneys need to double check and just make sure the water rights isn't outside of that eminent domain. And we've got some other options before we ever get to that point, but that's one option.
Mark, if the headgate is the end of their services and they're not going to build services for their shareholder, wouldn't they just say, well, the water stops here. If you want to make use of it, you can lease your half share to somebody else, but the water's not going to get to you anymore. Wouldn't that also be a resolution?
You would think so, and that's one of the discussions we had, but they made it clear that they have no legal obligation to this one owner and their half share of getting that water to them.
So,
Which makes,
I guess I don't understand then why, if they're not passing on a legal obligation to us, why we're just snagging one.
And how do we, if they don't have an easement for their water to run across our property, then how can that water run across the property without that homeowner paying us for whatever transportation or water pressurization system that we provide?
No, I agree, McKay, I agree with what you said. And we discussed all of those options again today with the attorneys. And they're checking all of those options. They're checking the water laws to make sure there's not some unusual law with an open ditch policy for historical use. That's separate from a typical legal easement. So as soon as I get those comments back, I'll make sure I share it with all of you so you know where we're at.
Are they also looking carefully at their purchase agreement with from the canal company? I mean, not where we purchased the property, but where they haven't purchased any. I understand they have an easement, but what was that agreement?
And McKay, that's a great question. And really, the only thing on the Alta survey is this. This is the only legal easement which gets to their north head gate to allow them to discharge every October. So there's a lot of legalities involved in this, and we're just going to make sure we're on the right side of those definitions before we communicate anymore with the canal company or the user.
So was it a lack of our due diligence or the canal company's due diligence that didn't give us this information?
So that is a great question. We did our due diligence. We had several meetings with the canal company and the engineers who sit on their board. There's two people who sit on their board who work for BYU that have managed this canal company, and there's one city engineer who also sits on this board. So we had a lot of conversations. This is what happened. This is what I've been told and shared with me. The user along that south side had not paid assessment fees since 2015. The canal company was not aware of it. The user contacted them, I think, as soon as they found out we were purchasing and closing on the property, and they reinstated their half share. And at that point, that's when they notified me that basically, hey, make sure you work with this homeowner. So we're trying to be good neighbors with everybody, at the same time protect the district's interests.
And Mark, so when we closed, I paid about, I want to say about $3,000 extra for a whole bunch of warranties that we've had cleared title on this property. And they were covering things that were not known and disclosed. If you've gone back to the title company and said, wait a second, here's this extra thing that was not covered in the out survey or whatever, and how much can we recoup through any of those extra warranties that were paid for?
We haven't had a conversation about what we can recoup if we have to take this step, but I have visited with the title company, reviewed the title commitment, the title search process, and this is the only legal responsibility we have, according to that entire process, is to grant them access to the end of their line, that head gate. There are no other right-of-ways listed for that open ditch on the rest of the property or adjacent to it anywhere else.
Mark, is it under grass, under playground? Is that what it's underneath? They need access to it?
Correct. It'll be under playground space. And we just don't want a buried line that we do not benefit from or that there could be a problem from. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't want to create a situation where there's suddenly more shares exchanged south of us where we become a long-term canal hub on an elementary campus. We just don't want to do that.
Why wouldn't we consider going down along the property line on the west side right here on the bottom that is right next to the road and just underground drill it underneath the road and push it there, so that way we're not going up through the playground and around?
Right, because
So-
isn't that going up in slope too?
Yes.
It's deceiving. There's some pretty good pressure when it releases from this head gate, and believe it or not, it makes its way slowly to this point, under the street, and then down around just little by little. So Derek, that's a great question, and yes, that was our original plan when there were no users, right? We were just going to dump in, the city had approved it, we were just going to dump in their discharge into a new storm drain line that ran the length of Locust Lane and connected to 820 North. And we could still do that, but when we get to this corner, that is downhill from the user, and we would have to put in a pump system to get the water to them. And
Or he would have to put in a pump system.
What's that?
Or he would have to put in a pump system if he doesn't have an easement.
Whoever legally owns that responsibility, correct. There would have to be a pump to get the water to that one user. The other thing to be aware of is there's a developer who's bought every piece of acreage around this entire south area except this one home. And so I've sent notes to the city engineer saying, look, I know this is going to be improved. There's no way that traditionally what's happened with open ditch is going to be allowed once you improve all of this around this one user. So I'm having those conversations as well with the city engineer. I just wanted to make you aware of what's going on, how we're working through it, in case you hear anything from anybody. It's kind of it's a unique process. So, and I'll let you know as soon as I get more details from our legal reps and or recoup title companies. Any other questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mark, would you mind getting these slides to Bonnie for us? So
Yes.
that we'll get it, so we have
Yep.
access?
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, next we're going to have a discussion about Shoreline Middle School tennis courts request. I'll begin the discussion on this. I don't remember, 2 weeks ago we had a meeting with the city council, and we brought this up with them because this also becomes a community asset for everybody. So we asked them what their thoughts were on tennis courts, and do you guys remember the name? Who is the name of the gentleman for Parks and Rec?
Scott Henderson.
Thank you. So Scott Henderson told us that they're planning on building 6 more tennis courts throughout the city by 2030, and that by population-wise, they have enough tennis courts for our need of our city. One of our problems that I see is that tennis courts at our middle school is not a need. It's not an educational need. So I have a difficult time spending educational dollars on something that's not needed for the middle school there. It's not a UHSSA sanctioned sport at middle school. So what I want to do is bring this to the board and ask them if this is something that we want to move forward with or not. It's something that could be added later because we do have the land space down there. One of the other things that I have heard also is that this could be an equity issue with Centennial Middle School here because we do not have space to put tennis courts here. We don't own Sertoma Park next door to us. So if we're going to offer a program to one middle school, we should offer it to the other. So I want to open this up for thoughts on that. If this is something we want to add.
I've asked the neighborhoods around Shoreline, and they do want tennis courts. So I'm going to follow what they want. So,
Right, but are we willing to spend $500,000 on something that's not an educational need when things are so expensive already?
this is what the people
Okay, so, go ahead. Okay, all right. I understand that, I understand there's a want for the tennis courts, and people have been writing in emails. I've received several emails, and I don't disagree with any of the benefits that tennis gives to children, or, you know, the organized sport, being able to play it as an adult, and all the wonderful things that comes from tennis. And I don't doubt that the neighborhood wants a tennis court. If we said, do you want, you know, a pool, they'd say yes. I mean, that's just kind of a given. I think they would say yes no matter what, because it would be a fabulous asset to have. And I don't disagree with any of the arguments that have been presented to us via email and through conversations and whatnot. But I feel like I have to side with Melanie on this. One, there is no tennis team at Dixon Middle School. And I recognize that the programs that are within the community are designed to funnel kids and help them be prepared for the program at Provo High. So in that regard, it makes sense, but we have to remember that we are always trying to keep our budget in check. We're always trying to figure out how to spend it correctly and always trying to figure out how to be fair in what we spend it on. And where we do not have a tennis team at Dixon Middle School, it doesn't make sense to me to have tennis courts there. And a couple things to note. One, the tennis courts at the current Dixon Middle School, there's no plans as of right now of what's going to happen yet, so those aren't going to go away right away. So those can still be used. And I don't know what the plan will be, but for a while it seems like they can still be used. So that's something to note, that those aren't going away. Those aren't going away right away. But also, the program that uses the tennis courts for the most part is a private business venture. And I feel like we would be building the courts to benefit that business. And that's not a knock on that business. It's a great business. My son is a part of that program. Has been a part of the program. It's fabulous. But if we set a precedent where we're building tennis courts for a private business to benefit from and not necessarily our educational programs, then we're setting a precedent to do the same thing for anyone else who requests anything like it. And so I just feel like we need to be careful there and make sure our education dollars are spent on our education needs. And like Melanie says, it's not a need at the moment. It's not a solid no. It could be added in the future. But we have to be able to overcome some of these challenges. And maybe that's what the public can help us do, is figure out how to overcome these challenges. How can we pay for this without breaking into our budgets? How can we as a community figure out how to get it without imposing on other programs and other needs within the district? Maybe that's how we approach this.
I'll add, I also see a lot of value for our students in our community to have tennis courts, but I don't feel that it's the right thing for us to be the ones to build them. I know a lot of the community would love to be able to use tennis courts, and if we put them on school property, then only students can use them during the school day, and that really limits the ability for the community to use them. And I feel since it would be such a good benefit to our community, that this would be something that we work with the city Parks and Rec as a community, not as a school district, but that the city should be the ones providing the tennis courts. And in that meeting with the city council, Scott Henderson did mention that they are working towards putting in a new city park in that area. And he seemed open to taking suggestions from the community and possibly putting the tennis courts there or somewhere else within that vicinity, which I thought was very promising. And I'm glad to hear that they do want to add more tennis courts in the city in the next few years. I just don't feel it's right to put them at the middle school this time.
I love tennis. I think we have a bunch of tennis players on this thing. My wife coaches at Timpview. But the problem with tennis is if you put 4 courts in, that's 16 kids who can play. So if you're playing doubles, you can't really do it as a PE class. So it doesn't work. So you're using all this space for something that can't be used for our schools. They're expensive. We have a foundation. If these guys want to get together and raise the money, perhaps they can talk to the foundation. As far as I can tell, we don't have a problem with tennis courts being on the school grounds. We just have a problem with paying for it. So if they want to go out and raise the money and work with our foundation, I bet we'd probably be okay with it, or with the city, and that might be a good solution. But I just don't see an educational use, so I'm with Melanie.
I just want to add that I agree with that. It's not an educational need, but we don't have a soccer team, we don't have a basketball team, we don't have any of those things, so we still have those facilities there. And so I do like the idea that Nate just brought up, that we have worked with the foundation and some other people to perhaps put them in, and maybe we would, I guess we would be in charge of maintenance costs, which might be less. So actually, that would be my favorite plan after hearing that. But also one of the main arguments to move Dixon to Shoreline was that there was so much more space available for sports. So this just rings really hollow to me. Like, yeah, we have more space for sports, but not really. So just, I want to go on the record as saying that.
Just to answer part of that, we just saw the budget for the build on Shoreline. And although that's under what we set aside for the building, that doesn't include all the soft costs, which would also need to be included in that. And then we know with inflation that some of those numbers could continue to change, that we're not locked into everything. And so it just worries me to go ahead and add something right now that could be added later pretty easily if we chose to go that route when we don't know where our budget's going to land right now on the building.
And I do want to say, we do have basketball courts and whatnot, but we use those in PE. I know they currently do use the tennis courts in PE, like Nate's saying, you have to, I believe they have to split the classes. Like, I don't know if the whole class does.
Either way, they're being used for tennis. So I think it's a disingenuous argument to make that they're not used for that when they actually are used for that. And maybe they have to split them. And I'm not even saying we should build tennis courts, but sometimes I feel like we make statements and then later on we come back and say we were just kidding. And so I do know that they do use them for tennis. I live around the corner, I see them out there, they're playing tennis.
So I think that all these, I think there is not a single board member that wouldn't want to do everything we could for every desire. The question is the specific parts. So it seems to me, when I see a number and then value engineering, we've already given up something better for something that will do the job. That's what value engineering is. And in the current environment, adding an additional cost, I'm not saying yes or no to tennis courts or other amenities. I'm saying first we need to build the building. And then we need to decide and we need to see if we actually do have the money that we asked the public for to complete that project. And then we need to find either if there's a surplus at the end of that, or if there is, we can have a discussion around that surplus versus any other need in the district, or if we are going to have a discussion of that, oh, this is something that we need to do, we're going to find the money to do this. But so far, we've had a project and a budget that didn't include that, and we're trying to manage those costs already. And adding an additional thing, again, not saying yes or no, but I think it would be wise to get further down the project to see that we can actually get everything done.
Thank you. If I can add just one more thing as you guys consider this, it would be better for us, the earlier the better for us to know, because the tennis court area, as you know, it's a different subgrade prep than open green space. And so it is a different system, and we'd have to make sure the dimensions fit and the drainage fit around that space and everything involved with that. So and then just a reminder on costs. If it's 6 courts, the cost right now is about $100,000 per court, right? So with 6 courts, or $600,000. I don't think we'd ever have a need for 8 courts. We do that at the high school so they can host region events. You need 8 courts. But anyway, that's the only thing I would ask is the sooner the better, because it does make a difference in site prep.
Mark, can I ask a quick question? Do you happen to know the history of why we have tennis courts at Dixon Middle School currently, when they came in, or what the reasoning was? We've never had a tennis team there, right?
Correct. From what I understand, no. They've just been there for a very, very long time.
Fair had them as well. When I went to school.
Fair had some as well. Correct. Yeah. I know a few years ago we looked at removing those existing courts to improve parking, and then we tabled that. But Yeah, I don't know the history of how long it's been there. They've seen better days, I can tell you that. They're in bad shape.
So it sounds like the majority are saying that we should not move forward with this project at this time. There anyone else want to back me up, or anybody else want to disagree with me on that?
That's what it looks like. Two of us said, I'm kind of on the fence, but I think our
Looking for a
arguments.
motion?
Well, we're not really voting on it. I'm just trying to see what direction, if we need to put this on a vote in the future business meeting. And it looks like it doesn't look like it had the three.
I think only two of us would be willing to look at it and willing to support it, which is not the majority.
You guys are so far away, I can really not tell what's going on in this meeting.
I know. Nice to see you down there.
Whatever. I want to go on record saying I would love to do this project, but I'm not in favor of it.
So, and it may cost more down the road if it's something we do decide to do, but at the time, I think this is where we're going to table this at the moment. Okay, next we're going to go on to effective teachers in high poverty schools, and I'm going to turn the time over to Jason Cox, our Deputy Superintendent of HR.
Good evening, school board. So we're excited to announce that we do have some people who qualified for as effective teachers in high poverty schools. We wanted to bring those to you tonight for two reasons. One, to celebrate the people, but the other is that there's a financial responsibility with this. The school district pays half of the award when someone qualifies for this. The state pays the other half. And so the somewhat interesting or awkward part of this is that we are doing a lot of recognitions tonight. We can recognize these people. You will then later vote on whether you approve the budget to pay them for it. So that's a little bit of the awkward part of this whole conversation. So I wanted to just up front say we are very honored to have people who qualify for this. The way they qualify is the fact that they have helped students raise their average scores in their classes from the year before and have met the state standard in doing so. So any questions about that? I did want to just check with you to make sure you're okay. We are going to recognize them. They're on the schedule to be recognized. We'll then be later coming to you to ask for your approval of the budget. So I apologize for the awkwardness of that. And I can talk to you a little bit about the timing. The timing is that their information about the state's approval for that comes at a certain point, and then from there we move into asking you for approval of the budget. The two just coincided with our recognitions this year. So I apologize for that, but would love to, again, just hear any comments you have.
So my follow-up question might be for Anne Marie. But I am curious, when we have these teachers who are doing amazing things like this and are getting really good results, what are we doing to have them teach other teachers what they're doing and spread that success even more throughout our district?
Good idea and suggestion. We have not done anything officially. I can tell you that some of the people anecdotally over the years, we have several from Spring Creek and Timpanogos historically. We've tried to involve them on committees. They're being utilized in their schools, oftentimes in leadership positions. So that's the manner, but I appreciate I'm taking some encouragement to perhaps do more. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Any other comments about this? It's great to see that we have so many teachers that qualify for this. So, thank you. All right, next, land trust plans, and Alex Judd, our Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Ed, will present.
Thank you. Just wanted to give you an update on the land trust. Thank you for taking the time to read through those plans and give the feedback to the school administrators so that they can make the adjustments to the plans as needed. We've got all the plans back and we've submitted them to the schools with your feedback and recommendations, as well as feedback for us on how we can improve the rubric and make it a little bit more effective in helping to help you give feedback to the schools, because there was some feedback from each of you that helped me to be able to see where we can make it better for going forward in the future. So thank you. They will submit those plans, and once they're submitted, we'll send them on to the state, and then come June will be the final approval after the state gives their feedback to the schools as well. Any questions for me?
All right, you might as well stay up there. We're going to have a summer school update next.
Okay, currently our summer school situation, just want to give you an update on it. I want to give huge kudos to Charity Williams for doing a lot of the legwork and support to help make this doable this year. Our budget has been reduced from last year, so we don't have quite the same amount of resources to be able to apply to this. As we engage this conversation to support the students that we felt like were critical and need the support through the summer, we have consolidated to 3 sites that will allow us to be able to host students from all over the district. All schools will be able to have access to it. And we're prioritizing based on what the schools have deemed as their priority run students. So the schools have each put in data regarding their students that are priority ones as needing supports and helps to be able to keep them going during the summer so they don't lose any summer learning and retain what they've gained throughout the year. So each school has been given a certain number that they're going to make a request, and we've invited 408 students to this point to be a part of the in-person summer school at the 3 sites, which will be Provost, Franklin, and Timpanogos. Each of those sites will have a site coordinator that will work closely with Charity to be able to help coordinate, make sure all the ins and outs of the daily workings are going and taking place, and not to add too much pressure and stress on the school administrators that are also starting to prep for the next following year. We also will be offering an online portion as well, and that will be housed out of Wasatch Elementary School. So every student in the district that would like to have some summer school, but may not want to come in person or are not at the priority level, will still be able to access and work through a system that we've set up at Wasatch Elementary School to be able to meet the needs of any student who wants to do some online. We've talked with our tech department, and we'll be able to sign Chromebooks over the summer as well, and work with each school to be able to have them have access if they want it, if they need it, and make sure that we're giving kids access through the summer that want it, while targeting our most priority students that need the supports throughout the summer. Any questions for me? Yeah.
I know it's been a hard year for teachers, and a lot of them probably want a break. So how is it going with finding teachers to do summer school?
This is really a really big piece of this, and we initially put out a request for teachers to say who's interested and willing to do summer school to be able to help our kids progress. Initially, we had roughly 50 teachers that were like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. We're about half that have since dropped out because as I visited with the principal today, they just said our teachers are exhausted. They have worked really hard and given their heart and soul this year. And as they're getting closer to the end of the year, they're recognizing that they need to take a little bit of a step back, re-energize, give themselves a break, and come back in the fall and be ready to go. Last summer, we really incentivized and pushed to try to get teachers to be a part of this, and many of the teachers, when they came back in the fall, were like, it really took a toll. So we're trying to be very sensitive to finding the balance of saying we have kids that really need some supports during the summer. We want to support them. But we also recognize we have some incredibly important staff members that we want to be sensitive to their needs as well. Hold it
25 enough.
We're working on that. And right now we believe we're right at that cusp of being able to meet the needs of what we have. We're also working to possibly invite a few paras in this process to go to fill in the gaps as we need. The challenge we're running into is we really want to make sure that we're attending to some of the high instructional pieces, like 95%, that require some of this training. So we're working on that part of it.
Are they offering busing?
So yes, each school site is going to have a bus be able to pick them up from their school. So like if they're Rock Canyon and they're going 10th of August, there would be a bus that would pick up at Rock Canyon and drive them.
Do we have bus drivers?
Like I said, Jeremy knows all the logistics of this.
If the student is a walking student, they'll walk up to their school and get picked up there. If they are a current bus student, they will get non-zone pickups. So it'll be not as many stops during the school year, but we'll cover it by zone.
I have one more quick question, sorry, I missed the third school, I was trying to take notes and keep up, and I missed it. Were those Franklin and?
Tippecanoe.
Thank you.
Did you already say what the dates are for in-person and online? Yeah.
So we'll start that first Monday in June, so it's June 6th, and it'll go through the 29th, I believe. Is it the 30th? The 30th of June, so all of June. And it'll be Monday through Thursday. Fridays are, we do 4 10s in the summer, so it'll be Monday through Thursday.
But we'll be taking out the Juneteenth, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Same for online?
Yes. Now, there are some places where kids may be able to go longer over the summer, but we got to collect those Chromebooks back to do some inventory on them and that kind of stuff. But they still will be able to access some of the online programs that the schools have purchased already and continue to do that in the summer if they have access to those technology devices on their own.
All right, any further questions about summer school? Right, and then how do we talk about full-day kindergarten?
Full-day kindergarten, yes. Okay, so yesterday we met with the committee and reviewed our grant awardment from the state in regards to all-day kindergarten. We did get roughly $200,000 that would give us that 6 spots or FTEs that we could have FTEs that we'll be able to place at our place in our schools. After visiting with the committee yesterday and feedback from them, we believe that we will be wise in placing an all-day kindergarten at every one of our non-Title I schools, which will allow us to give access to every student within our district that hasn't had that before. So many of our Title I schools already have all-day kindergarten in some form or another that's allowed them to be able to support a lot of the students that need that all-day kindergarten. Now we'll be able to give it to every school in our district, even the non-Title I schools.
So there's enough space in the schools for?
Yeah, we actually went back to a great question. We did go back and talk to at least one of our schools that was feeling like there was a little bit of a pinch, but after visiting further, we believe that we're going to be able to make it work, and it will be a great benefit to the community.
Did you say 200,000 pays for 6 FTEs?
Half FTEs.
Okay.
So
But they're already there, so they're going to extend their contract. Okay.
It's great news.
Okay.
And when will they start applying for that all-day kindergarten? Like when will the schools keep putting this out for students to say we would like to, or parents to say we want to do all-day kindergarten?
So they'll go through the enrollment process, and part of that next step for us is to create some kind of a support system / process for getting into the all-day kindergarten. We're still looking for some clarification from the state as to what the parameters are for who's eligible for all-day kindergarten, if there are some parameters that they're expected to see.
Any further questions about all-day kindergarten?
I'll ask you later.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, actually, I do have a question.
Are we going to be keeping stats and data and whatnot to show how great or not great it is, so we can go to the state and lobby for more if we want more?
We will be keeping stats and data. That's one of the pieces that it absolutely will go back to the state, because I know that they're looking to try to expand this. This is something that we're looking, this is the first year of installment, so in the future years, there'll be more.
And from my understanding, this will be for sure a 3-year thing.
Minimum commitment of 3 years. So each of these schools will have to maintain for 3 years.
Any further questions? Thank you. All right, next we're going to have a discussion on reporting information. So board member Terry McCabe requested some changes in our last board meeting, and so because it wasn't part of the agenda, we opted to put it as part of the agenda for tonight to have a discussion as a board. So I'm going to have our business administrator, Derek Anderson, to explain some of the pros and cons.
So on there's what's attached from the state code. If you look at item it says, prepare and submit to the local school board each month a written report of the district's receipts and expenditures. This is very vague, and that's what's required in the state code. There's another piece where, right above it, number 3, where it says that I will countersign with the president of the school board on the warrants and claims against the district. So those are 2 very different pieces. The warrants that are in claims against the districts and legal documents would be checks that are cut and contracts that are the legal documents that are signed and things like that. Number 4 is referring to, hey, look, monthly you need to submit to the school board what the status is of the school district in terms of the revenues and expenditures. So if you go to the board, the financial update document, did I just close everything out on the screen? Of course it did. Oh, come on.
Which one are you asking us to look at, the executive summary?
Yeah, so if you go to the executive summary, so that first page on the executive summary, where it just is written saying, hey, here's the total expenditures and the percentage of the budget, the revenues, and this is the percentage of the budget. That really is all that's required, and that's a variation. It could be something else. It could be a variation of the dollar numbers instead of a percent. It's just very vague in saying written, provide something written to the board saying that this is where the financial update is. So everything else that's attached to that first page on the executive summary and the warrant summary are all things that we are doing above and beyond what's required in state code for transparency. And that's monthly. So then if you go up to, if you go back to the discussion piece in board docs, there's 2 things that I've also attached in there in the description. So quarterly, and I've given the address in there, we submit to what is called transparent.utah.gov. And anybody can go there and actually look up where we're spending every penny every quarter. So we have to do that every quarter. And so you can see how much we spent at, I don't know, Walmart or Pizza Hut or, what's the Cisco, the food place. You can literally go there and see every transaction. Not only that, you can go there and see our payroll information. That all of that is open to the public, and we have to submit that quarterly. Then annually, we have to do our audit from an external auditor, and we also have to do our budget adoption and the budget preparation. So in terms of what is required, we are absolutely meeting the required and far exceeding the requirement. If there's things, and if the board wants to have more things that are more transparent in terms of the ability for the public to access or view things and make it easier, instead of putting more information into board docs, because there's already like 200 pages in there, my recommendation would be is that we create like a web page on our district web page, a specific page for transparency that would include graphs and things like that, so it's just not a big data dump of information. So that's kind of where we are in terms of what's required of the law. If you would like more, I'm happy to do whatever, but I do think it should be something that isn't something that we just dump more information into board docs. That way, to me, that would be easier for the public to access, and we could easily make something that is easier to understand for them instead of just giving a data dump of information.
I personally feel that what you provide for us is sufficient, and I like your idea of putting something on the website. So for our needs for the board meeting, I feel like what you're giving us is enough. So that's my feeling. Anybody else want to chime in?
I don't mind looking at what we're getting and evaluating and seeing if we want to see something different, or, you know, that's not a bad thing to rethink a little bit and just make sure the info we're getting is what we want. I feel like it's sufficient as well, but I do like your idea also of going online and just having this a little bit more accessible, because that's the point of this, besides submitting it to us, is to have it out for the public to find, but it's probably not very easy to get to, honestly. So that makes more sense in my mind.
And/or just those websites that you point us to import us. If we can just have that when they go onto the financial section of our website under financial reports, just say, and to look for more information, go to transparent.utah.gov or whatever. You know, even that, if it's already out there, we may or may not, but if we don't have to, spend more time recreating what's already out there, you know, we could at least start there and then see if that's enough, or if we want to do a little bit more with graphs or something. But I think we also need to balance how much time you're spending on this. Is it worth that when you have many other responsibilities? So.
But I have a question in regards to what exactly Terry was asking for. Do you see any benefit in adding what she's asking for? What would be the pros and cons to adding that particular information, dividing things out by department?
Pros in things by department, yeah, I mean, I think I love the idea of putting stuff on our website and being transparent. I love it. Unstructured data it has its pitfalls, because people can grab things of unstructured data that don't know how to use it or what it means. And here's a perfect example. So like, let's take trust lands that we just talked about, right? Or this extended day kindergarten. We are not like a public entity. So when I was outside of school districts, when I was an auditor for Deloitte, and you go into a company, right? They literally can transfer funds in between departments, spend how they want, and there's no real laws behind it. Like, they just have to run their business and utilize their money the best way possible. We don't get that opportunity, because the money we get for trust lands, or say the money we get for extended day kindergarten, has to stay for that program. And so if somebody goes in and says, hey, this school gets all this money and they didn't spend it, well, there could be reasons behind it. And so to me, that's why unstructured data in a school district can create way more problems than benefits, because of the sheer lack of understanding behind the requirements for school districts. So to me, if we're going to go down this route, we would create essentially like dashboards, kind of like how, you know, the monthly update that I give, where it includes graphs and comparisons and things like that. To me, we structure the data in a way that it's easily understandable but transparent. And so that's where I think it should go in that direction, because unstructured data just creates problems for everybody.
So then do you feel like there is data we can put on our website that's different than, but just as useful, that's not already accessible on these other websites?
Yes, because the what's on the other website is one level above unstructured data, because like the transparency website, we just put all of our information in there, and somebody can go and filter or search for things, but it still doesn't really give any kind of context, right? And so really what we're doing is maybe one level above unstructured data.
I think like a problem we have, this is something I've seen as a school district, because if you're working in a more professional area, you're going to get a lot of statistical reports. You're going to use a company like Domo, or, I mean, there's a whole bunch of companies that take your data and then they export it to you in a form that's usable and helpful. And it's a lot of work to do manually. I just did, tonight, it's my board report, and I'm going to do it on finances, and it takes a ton of work because it's not easily done. Now, if we were to go to Domo and spend, you know, $100,000 a year, we could get beautiful reports and it would just send it to us. I just don't know if that's a priority right now. And we also lack a lot of context with these numbers. I mean, you go to transparent.org, and I've spent a lot of time there the last little bit, just finding out you spent $15,000 on pencils. I mean, that's useful, but if I don't know how much Alpine spends on pencils, or how much that means per pupil in elementary schools, are we spending this much per pupil? There's just, the data is not helpful because we don't really know what it means just on its own. And that's, so I love more data the better. If we had a data section on our website, it would be awesome. It's just, if you don't automate it, it takes a ton of time, and maybe we could get some accounting guy from BYU, and he could come in and we pay him a bit to just run reports. But it's a lot of busy work to get something that's useful.
So are you saying because it's a lot of busy work, you don't want Derek to do it, or you do? Or?
Well, I don't want Derek to do it no matter what, because he's, but I would love to have all that info. I don't know if we want a full-time guy to do it, and it's probably a half-time guy to make reports that are useful to us that give context. Or we pay Domo $150,000 a year or more, and they give us a beautiful dashboard that gives us information that's useful.
Do you agree with that, Derek? Do you like it would be super time-consuming to do that?
So that is correct. The dashboards of all that I've been seeing for on those weekly updates, I did that in my spare time, meaning after work hours, while I was in Jordan. I filled all those out because I wanted to learn that software and figure it out. It took me the better part of 6 months to gather the data, then start building those out. And then the other thing is that's just what I built out in kind of 6 months in the evenings. But then the next year happens, and you have to go out, manually gather all the data from other school districts and where things are landing, and then manually all bring it back and then update. And so it's not to do the comparisons towards other districts. It's not a streamlined process because you have to manually go out and get what the other districts are doing, and then build those out. So to do something like that is probably a half-time FTE in terms of building things from the ground up and actually starting to make them usable across the entire district or department and say, you know, hey, this school and this is how things are going, you know, with this school and whatnot. So yeah, it definitely would probably take about a half-time FTE.
And if we look at our costs, 85% of our costs are salaries and benefits. And so we're talking about trying to figure out what that 15% left is. And you know, it reduces maybe some of the benefit of having all that data. And there's a ton of benefit to having that data. It's just, is where we want to put our efforts.
Can you give us your opinion on if it's worth it?
So I think, you know, data and transparency is very important. And only through data and the statistics do you gain insight into the organization and maybe where your money is going in terms of what maybe high leverage items and hey, we're getting a lot of value out of this, or hey, we're not getting as much value out of this, or being able to just explain, hey, yep, this is backing up what we're thinking it's doing. So I am fully on board with being mindful with data, but if we go down this route, I would only recommend going down this route if the data is used. It would be pointless to put it all together and monitor and update and do this if we don't make decisions based off that data.
Well, and used widely, right? Not just like 2 people use it. It needs to be.
Correct.
So how do you foresee it being used? Do you foresee it just being able to use that as our reports for the board meetings, and then just for the public to just log on and, like, is that enough?
Well, I mean, it could be used in a multifaceted way. I mean, you could use it to communicate with the public in terms of how, you know, where all your money is going. It could be used to point to in terms of comparisons of other districts. It could be utilized to make decisions in terms of where you're at, and maybe making some changes. It can be, there's an endless possibility of uses for it. It's really more of implementing and using it to help drive decisions. You know, to just build it out and say, hey, cool, this is a really cool tool, this is really neat, that, you know, but it wouldn't really have a lot of value. If it's there to communicate to the public, you know, there's some value there. If you move it, you know, to one next level, which is, hey, we're using it to communicate to the public for bond, you know, issuances, or, you know, annually where things are at, or if somebody wants to go and talk, you know, see how we compare to other districts, that's also great too. But really the highest value of data is making decisions off of it.
So also, I have a quick question, sorry. I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions, but when we were at the USDA conference this year, we got introduced to another website, auditor.utah.gov/kids, where you can see exactly where all your money is going. Is that not also a resource? Like, I'm just saying, there's stuff out there already. Is there enough out there already that we don't need to use your time?
So you're absolutely correct. There's the other one, which is the auditor.utah.gov, it's Project Kids. Project Kids, I love the concept of what they've gone and done. It does have some inherent flaws because of one, they're taking it from their lens and just grabbing information and trying to jam a standardized formula into what they're doing. And so it throws metrics way off. And actually in Nate's board report, you'll see it later on. And in one of my weekly updates, we talked about it where Alpine was way high on an outlier in terms of the number of classified employees they had. And it's because of the raw data that's just grabbed without any context behind it. And so that's also the hard part about that. So
I guess, Terry, I want to ask you a question. What did you want more, having the more data, what was your intent? Like, what do you want?
Well, everything that you guys have been talking about is nothing what I wanted.
Can you elaborate? What exactly is it that you want then?
I wanted more detail in every single department. I want to know exactly what they're spending money on from every single department.
And so that you can get that information in transparency.utah.gov because you can filter by location and you can filter by program and see all of what they've spent by location and program. So that information is in transparency. It's only done quarterly, so that is the caveat. It's not monthly, but it is quarterly, and it does give. You would have to know, hey, look, and it gives the description though, so you could say, hey, look, Provo High School. I want to click on Provo High School, give me all the expenditures from Provo High School and then select the last 3 months, the last quarter. Do you want the last year, or you can even go back to the prior year? But it does give that level of detail. But it's unstructured data. What you do is you click on a filter, it kicks out Provo School District or Provo's High School, and it's just like an Excel tech table of just data and the amount and the description of what it is that they purchased. So it is unstructured data. So that's what I mean is if you're wanting to, say, hey, look, we want a dashboard that is just for Provo High School that includes, where their test scores were, how much they're spending in all these different categories, along with, how many FTEs they have compared to other schools or other high schools. We can put all that together and generate it. And so that way you can see kind of like a dashboard for that one school. But to just have the unstructured data, if that's already in transparency, and they would be duplicating the information by putting it in to board docs and then also transparency. And the other thing is if we dump it all in board docs by, let's say, location, right, or department, what may be there 1 month may not be there next month, because in accounting there's things called journal entries, and somebody at a school may have accidentally coded it to the wrong program or location or something, and then as we go through and do our cleanup and we close things out, it ends up being moved to a different location or program.
Okay, so I just need to know, I need to see a directive of, do we want to put this on a board vote? Because if we want to have Derek do this, it looks like it's going to cost money, and it'll be more than $50,000, so this is something that we're going to have to vote on as a board.
I don't see a need for it.
So you're okay with how we're doing it then?
Yes, for now.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear that
So
she's in a, so I think we're okay to.
So is there anybody want to move forward with putting this on our next agenda to vote for extra stuff? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so we'll just keep things as is right now. Thank you. Next, we're going to have an attendance update by Doug Finch, our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Good evening. I've been asked to talk about compulsory attendance and where that stands with the state of Utah and with our school district. We could spend the next 3 days on this topic, so I'm going to try and speak very little and perhaps get some direction from you, as I think we'll anticipate some time in June as we will try and update some of our procedures that we give as guidance for our secondary and elementary schools. So just as some context for you, and just for the public's information, during this last calendar or school year, the State Board of Education, under the direction of the state legislature, put a moratorium on compulsory attendance. That sunsets or ends at the end of this school year. So we're back online with compulsory attendance being one of the elements of state code moving forward. And we've been reaching out for agencies that have supported us, such as DCFS for educational neglect, or for our contacts through the juvenile court system, for what we've also possibly referring for compulsory education violations. We have very few individuals historically that have needed those levels of intervention, but they are back online beginning next year. What I think we're hearing from a lot of the schools, and maybe you've heard from them as well as your constituents in the community, is the unclear expectation that was associated with the idea of school optional, right? Anytime you eliminate that compulsory attendance piece, it certainly sends a government message. You've also heard in some of these board presentations from the principals the concern they've had about lower levels of engagement, lower levels of attendance. I asked just again for some context, trying to look at the numbers so I could be responsive to not necessarily just react to, again, the anecdotal data that we're hearing. What has been the impact if we look at average daily attendance, that is total people attending divided by total membership that we have on any given day. And trying to analyze that from 3 years ago, that would be the 2018-2019 school year, as compared to what we've seen this school year, the 2021-22 school year. And across the board, we are seeing a decrease in average daily attendance. But that amount is somewhere ranging between 4 to 6% decrease in average daily attendance. So that's still of note. So for instance, at school, elementary school had 95% attendance 3 years ago. They're having somewhere between 90 and 91% attendance this year. So, you know, it's notable data, but again, I think that the idea that no one's attending anymore, or that it's drops of 10, 20, 30% decrease in attendance, our data initially is not showing that on the average. Now, could there be hidden in that data that some kids are still attending as well as they used to, and all of that percentage is being taken down because some people are really habitual attenders? Those sorts of things are always kind of lost in averages, I understand that, but just wanted to report that to you in general. Again, I wanted to give the opportunity for you to also know that the update, besides compulsory attendance coming back on board again, is that the state legislature has, within the last couple of years, also included additional guidelines for what they say are allowable parent excuses for absences. We've talked about that in previous meetings. Just to remind you again that now schools are no longer able to really challenge a parent's use of an excused absence. For instance, you don't need to bring a doctor's note if you go to a medical appointment. You don't necessarily have to ask for attendance with prior notice before you leave. This last, not this year, but previously, the legislative session said it's allowable for a student or the parent of a student to excuse for a mental health thing. So in other words, very open to interpretation. The message is clear that schools should be very thoughtful about taking on parents as far as allowing or not allowing them to keep their kids home from school. So built into that is a bit of a challenge. I know that schools and school officials feel as to what kind of teeth, do you hear the term that, or what kind of leverage do we have to compel people to attend school? Well, as a wise colleague of mine said the other day to us, we were talking about, he said, we need to begin to also be clear, and we communicate to people that not all absences are the same. An absence that is excused is probably not worth spending a ton of energy trying to contend with a parent over. It's the unexcused, or in many cases, the unverified absences that are left where a student misses, but there's no follow-up between school and parent as to where and why and what that was about. I also ran some data, just out of curiosity, this school year, and the number of unverified absences that exist in schools varied. In some schools, as few as 8 this entire school year. 8 unverified absences at one of our elementary schools, up to thousands that are some of our larger secondary schools, and everywhere in between. Even within the elementary ranks, that varies from one elementary school with 8 unverified absences for the whole school year so far, right, to another school having somewhere around 180 to 200 unverified absences. Middle schools are somewhere in the range of 400 to 800 total unverified absences, and like I said, the high schools are well over 1,000 per school. Just again, the volume of students when we talk about how many kids are missing school, and then when in secondary end of the component, you can miss 4, 5, 6 periods a day, and each of those causes an unverified absence. So you can see the contrasts there with measuring this at each of the levels. So that's just probably just some landscape I want to give you, the environment we're working in. The schools are anxious to get some guidance. We also know that it can be very prescriptive as to what a school community wants to do, the effort they put into a tiered system of support, the idea that they give clear expectations, that they communicate those expectations, and then when a student's not there, the school and the family are on the same page. Or some of the first guidelines we'd say are part of our tier 1 approach. Now getting into the details of what should be consequences or what should be interventions, First and foremost, and this will be my last statement, and I'll open it to your feedback here, is that we need to make sure that students missing school prompts a conversation. Whether you call that a conference, whether you call that a phone call, whether you call that a form of mediation, it should prompt conversation in my mind, because behind every absence is usually some other challenge that the students have that you need to unpack. You just can't be this, well, just across the board, we'll just sanction or punish everyone the same for absences. When you get behind an absence, you find more prescriptively what you should do to support the situation, to increase the level of capacity, or understanding, or follow-through, or partnership with the guardians. Many of you read, I know the Superintendent forwarded some information he got for the state about the importance of parents, first and foremost, are the primary individuals who are responsible for the child's education, and us as the educators are secondary and supportive to that effort, right? Such is the case for attendance as well. And in being in a parents-right state like we are, we understand we need to do this with parents. So I'll pause there, just again wanting to be sensitive, particularly Board President Hall, how you're wanting to manage the time for the rest of your agenda, and be open to just what you're hearing right now. And I would ask maybe Bonnie to help me take some notes here. If there's some things that you have as perspective here you want to offer me now, because my plan is to come in June with some specifically edited procedures that we're going to make available to the schools for next school year. So I'll pause at this time, see if there's any comment or question.
Is this tardies and absences, or just absences?
What I'm speaking to is absence, present or not present. So tardiness is certainly a discipline issue, a code violation for as far as engagement, but we're not lumping this necessarily tardies into it at this point, Terry. Thank you.
Besides the conversations with parents that ought to be number one, I would really love to see the schools get some guidance on some kinds of processes they can implement to make sure kids have some kind of, I don't know, consequence or whatnot for too many unexcused absences. And I am coming to you as a parent of a child who is a senior and has horrendous senioritis and will not go to school, and it's driving me crazy. And I would love for someone to walk him into the office and say, you have too many unexcused absences, here is whatever the consequence is. Because he is sure as heck not listening to me right now. So I don't know if that's, I know you say you want to work with parents and everything, I don't know if that's the right approach, but for me as a parent, working with the school district, I would love something like that to happen to my child right now. So I would love like schools to have some kind of list. Here's what you can do, and figure out what's going to work best for your school and put it into place. But I feel like there hasn't been anything like that in a while, and kids know it. And my son especially knows it. It's driving me batty. So that would be helpful.
Right, and working with a parent who's willing to say, I'll work with the school, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to excuse everything to avoid the punishments. Those are the points where those communications need to happen. So I don't know that our hands are altogether limited on having consequences. It's the idea of doing that consequence with parents' approval, because in the end, they'll always hold the trump card saying, well, I'll just excuse everything to avoid that consequence. So that communication and network of working together as a team is one of the critical first steps, like I mentioned. But thank you for that suggestion. Let's make sure we write that down.
I was just going to say,
Go ahead, Melanie.
along with her with the consequences, if you could give us a list of what's legally allowed, so that we know, I mean, and then we can narrow it, say, no, we're not going with that one or this one. But I think the law is so vague to us, that what is allowed for us to do as a district.
Thank you. We can research that. Thank you. Jennifer.
I think one of the biggest supports we can give the schools is support in telling the story of why it's important to be in school. That students understand that, the parents, I think some parents are like Rebecca, but there are other parents I think that don't understand the value, and especially now that with the secondary level, they have their Chromebooks and there's an attitude from some. In fact, I'd be interested to see the difference between our elementary attendance levels and our secondary, to see if it's a lot more egregious at the secondary. I can just do it on my Chromebook later. I'll just get on Canvas and do the assignment. I don't need to be in class. I think we need to work as not only a district, but as a community, PTAs and other community groups, just helping us tell the story of the value of being in school, that they'll see it more, and we won't have to go to as many consequences and it's going to take time. But that culture also with the tardies, I'm glad that Terry brought that up. That's a concern as well. Oh, it's okay, I'll leave campus for lunch, and it's okay if I'm not back by the time school starts, I'll get there eventually. We need to work on that as a community, and the schools, I think, need the support, and how do they do that in a positive way.
Yeah, thank you. And those are some great, that's best practice out there for tier 1 support is kind of telling the message, getting the word out, changing the culture within the organization. Great suggestions, thank you. I'll just continue again, being sensitive to the time allowed here. Is there other comment or question?
Any further comments?
I'll just end then with this idea about when you talk about what school should mean to a kid, we hope that they'll find these 2 R's. And then people talk about 3 R's in education: rigor, relevance, and relationship. Attendance really does come down a lot to those 2 of those R's, right? The idea of a relationship. And I think that not only relationship with individuals, but relationship with programs, right? Relationships with curriculum that they get excited about, with internships, with things like the CAPS program we celebrated last night. If we can get people to have that idea of relationship, the second is the relevance of what's taught. That the idea also that's there, when you're there, it's quality time. It's time that you don't want to miss, right? I think you visit with a lot of educators who say, I don't know that I have an attendance problem compared to some of my peers. And others will say, well, I can't get anyone to come to my class. And a lot of it maybe is tied back to those 2 R's, relationship and relevance. And those certainly some of the things along with what you suggested, Jennifer, are some suggestions. We'll try to provide support from my office staff, as well as this was recommended by the others to say, and give some prescriptive things of what can and can't be done as sanctions or interventions or support, consequences of sorts to support our schools moving forward. So thank you for the guidance. We'll plan to table this conversation until we see you, and we'll pick it up again in June with some more specific guidance for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have a Camp Big Springs update, and I'm going to turn the time over to Chad Duncan.
All right, thank you for the time. We're happy to do camping in this year. We've obviously gone 2 years without camp, and if you do the math, it's almost 3 years since we've been up there. So there's a lot of things that, it's really interesting. It feels like we're starting over in some ways, because like it's been so many years now, trying to get the nurses, the SROs, trying to get the teachers. In fact, we had a real teacher shortage this year. We ended up having to hire all new women teachers, and we still can't hire a male teacher. So we're one short, but we're making do. Interesting too, camp is coming up on its 75th year here in a couple of years. We're running for 75 years. So camp's running a long time. For the board that doesn't know, people don't know, camp is actually on Provo City property, not Provo School District property. So we work really closely with Provo City to run the program. They have a big water tank up there that they couldn't fill last year because there wasn't enough water. Luckily this year there's enough water. They've actually filled it for us already. It's a 5,000 gallon tank. They've got that full. So that's kind of what camp is. It's very rustic. I mean, it's probably the most rustic camp in the U.S. Keith, I would think probably there's another camp like it. A few of you have been up there. It's army tents on wood platforms. It's in the dirt. I mean, they're not cabins. It's not luxury by any means. It's a fun experience for kids. We're really excited to do that. The enrollment this year, I was concerned about the enrollment because with going 2 years and then COVID fears, things like that, we actually filled 485 out of our 560 slots. So we're about 20 kids short per week. Enough to run 4 weeks, and I was concerned we may have to go down to 3 weeks, but luckily we were able to keep all 4 weeks open. We did increase enrollment costs from 100. So some increase in cost. Food, one of it has gone up a lot. Lumber went up a ton, and we do a lot with building those platforms. A lot of platform damage. I have to do a shout out to Mark's department. His guys have gone up there and done a lot of work with the platforms, and he saved my life. I've probably been up there every night this week, next week, and the week after trying to get those platforms fixed. So Mark, thank you. Appreciate Doug Finch and his department working with the county health department, with the Provo City police department, trying to work some of those issues out for us. But I'm excited we're going to run again this year. One other thing I wanted to bring up is that we're doing something unique with our staff this year. In years prior, we used to just hire kids from either family or friends, people that kind of knew about it. We would hire a staff. What we decided to do this year is hire high school students as interns. So they're basically going to earn school credit at the same time that they're going to be working up at camp. And also part of the mentorship is working with students in activities and with other things. So we feel this is a really important move and really unique to what we're doing up at camp. I'm also excited to see what Susie Cox can come up with at camp when it comes to some sort of a ed tech thing. The problem is that we have no power and we have no internet and no self-service, so good luck with that. Anyway, so that's pretty much the update of camp. We're excited to go. It's go time. It's been a really busy time. It's been hard this year, but it'll be fun to get this thing going. So please, I invite all of you to come visit camp. Come spend some time with us up there. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, all during June, the best times to come. Monday is a field trip, and we hike the kids in, and then Thursday is our hike day. So Tuesday, Wednesday is when we do most of our classes, and it'll be fun for you to come. So please visit.
I just have one quick question for you. The week that had Juneteenth, how are you guys working that out?
We're still going to do it. We'll honor it, but I don't know how I don't think we can really maneuver around it and not do camp that day. But
So you're just still going up that same
yeah,
day?
well, but we will absolutely honor and do something on that day. So we can do that. Any other questions for me about camp?
If we want to come, can I just send you an email, let you know the days I'd like to be there?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we get your key and you come up. So we'll work that out. Thank you for your support, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Let's have a discussion about our May 24th study session. So with it being May, we have a lot of extra things that we go to. This is an extra long meeting as well. So I'm throwing it out there as a discussion. Do we want to postpone that meeting and just to move more into our June 14th meeting? Talking with the superintendent, there was nothing really pressing that we had to get done. Is that right?
We normally would be doing the initial reading of the budget, but with the potential for a truth in taxation this year, Business Administrator Anderson has recommended that we delay that till the June 14th meeting.
So is there any reason to hold our May 24th meeting that anyone sees?
And that night we do have, I believe, the Pro High School graduation, so it's going to be a long day one way or another.
Okay, so it looks like we will postpone that, but we won't hold the May 24th meeting then, and we'll just move to our June 14th meeting.
Can I just request that we put that out there, not just in the formal notice section, but I know when we've changed things in the past, because we don't update our website, and some people go back and check and then are surprised. So we need to make sure we put that out there.
Okay, good idea. This one, a discussion for on our June 28th study session. We as a board, sorry, I went to the wrong. So June 24th, sorry, 28th. The board docs is closed. That is the time that I would like to spend discussing, having more of an in-depth conversation about our board goals and the things that, where we would like to see the district go. So there's a chance that that meeting could be longer than an hour and a half. But with us not doing our May 24th meeting, that could help with making up some of that time. Is there any objection if that was a little bit longer meeting? To do some exercises to understand, Keith, were we going to bring somebody in maybe for that one?
Possibly, but as it stands right now, I don't have anyone lined up. But the guidelines that are written out in the board docs tab for this topic on the agenda that should provide enough guidance for both council and the board about how to prepare for that.
So is there any objection to maybe making that a little bit longer meeting? That's the 7:30 a.m. meeting, right?
So when you say longer, we're talking how?
So like maybe 10:30 or 11. So at the most, so, okay. I'm gonna, how much time is the large? Okay, let's do the large purchase request. Derek Anderson, you want to take that?
So, technology is submitted a request for 2 schools for a large purchase request. I apologize for the short notice. There was a potential pricing change that was going to be fairly significant, so we felt like it was good to put it on this agenda. So I'm going to turn the rest over to Chad.
And this is normally money we'd spend next year in replacing the intercom and safety systems at both Candy Crest and Spring Creek. The problem is we're looking at supply shortages and some other issues that are going to cause the price increase to go up quite a bit next year. The cost savings is significant enough. We wanted to bring it before the board now and get it ordered now to save the money for next year. So, hoping for your approval.
Wait, is this the same thing Mark was saying earlier? Then you say Western and something else, or is this different?
No, this is Spring Creek and Candy
Different.
Crest. Yeah.
And are they in a shortage to get any of this stuff, or do you think we're going to be able to get
We
it?
think we're going to be able to get it. The problem is that they really talk more about a price increase and just a hike that's going to happen. And I'm seeing it across the board in technology. I haven't seen it until now, but a lot of these costs, Chromebooks, and servers, and everything else, are just now starting to really increase. It's interesting. We haven't seen it until now, but it's really hitting us. So this is just something we hope to save a significant amount of money doing this now as opposed to waiting until next year to do it.
All right, I am going to move the rest of our study session to our business meeting so that we can take a quick break, and we will begin again at 7 p.m. So is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay, so we'll meet back here at 7 p.m.